Our senior senator of Texas, John Cornyn, will be in the Valley today. Should be here now, along with our vice president and a bunch of folks from the Senate. They say it's a bipartisan group joining the vice president. Touring an illegal immigrant detention processing facility here in McAllen. Senator Cornyn, welcome back to KURV. Thank you for giving us a few minutes this morning.
Absolutely.
This bipartisan group, who's on the bipartisan end of it? Who's joining you?
Well, it was a bipartisan invitation.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like any Democrats are accepting the invitation and planning a separate trip next week. That's unfortunate because we need to work together, as Henry Cuellar and I are trying to do, to solve this humanitarian crisis.
Understood. Would you say, Senator, that I was thinking about this, all this attention we're getting now, especially now, and we really appreciate the fact that the vice president is here. You think this trip from the vice president, you think this is maybe a reaction? Would you call it a reaction to the misinformation, what do you call it, blitz by some members in Congress, especially AOC a few days back, making those wild claims of women drinking out of toilets?
Yeah, I think it is an effort to try to correct the record and to make sure that people have the facts. There are wild accusations being made by people who are crying out for attention, and unfortunately are really not interested in solving the problem. They're more interested in the politics of this and driving a wedge between the American people. And this is something that is clearly Congress's responsibility, and we have to deal with this on a bipartisan basis because just making wildly false accusations isn't going to get it done, and we're not going to get it done if it's just a handful of people actually trying to solve the problem. We all need to weigh in.
As proof of how the wheels of government turn very slow. I know you've been for the longest time now trying to address this human tsunami issue, going back to the Obama years, about 4 or 5 years ago. You were hoping to get some judges on the border, and here just a few weeks back we found out we've got this tent facility coming up here pretty soon in our area. Brownsville, I think, is where we're going to set up, and there's a couple of other places. A tent for immigration hearings, even by teleconference. Finally, some immigration judges assessing those asylum requests on the spot and hopefully returning, folks who are gaming the system and keeping the folks who need to be protected.
Well, I know you've long been an advocate for that, and we've been pushing to get this done, and I think that does represent progress, Sergio. The biggest challenge is just the numbers are overwhelming, and as you know, under some court settlements years ago, which now need to be updated, you can't detain people for more than 20 days, which means you have to release them, and in return for their promise to return for their court hearing months and years in the future. And it doesn't surprise any of us that not many do return for those court hearings, because only about 10% of the people who claim asylum initially eventually get it in front of an immigration judge. But the coyotes have figured this out. They know our laws perhaps better than most members of Congress do, and they're exploiting it to their benefit.
And it seems that the international community has gotten wind of this as well. I saw a write-up up in New York that mentioned that we got more folks coming in from Africa, and proof of that already taking place just west of us, Del Rio and Big Bend area. They were taking in some folks from Sudan, hundreds of them, the so-called Democrat Republic of Sudan, their neighbors as well, hundreds of these folks. Haitians, they processed over 30 days just west of us, 1,000 people from Haiti as well. And they're coming to us because the word has gotten out that you come to this country, especially with a kid, you'll be able to stay, and those laws need to change. Is there anything, Senator, anything that the president can say, you can say, to bring Democrats around to the desperate need to change immigration law now and stop this gaming of the asylum system?
Well, I hate to say it, but right now, Mexico, the government of Mexico, is doing more than Democrats in the Congress. And I'm glad that President Trump was able to negotiate that change in Mexico's policy. I was frankly surprised, but pleased that they have accepted some responsibility. But I just think we need to continue to raise the visibility of this issue. I think the Vice President coming into the Valley today, joined by, I believe, about 8 senators, will help do that, capture the media's attention, and perhaps allow us to get the facts out there, because we know that people like AOC not only is a thorn in Nancy Pelosi's side, but she's not particularly interested in solving this problem. She's just trying to inflame emotions and spread disinformation.
Our senior senator from Texas, John Cornyn, joining us right now. He's in South Texas, along with the vice president, visiting one of these processing centers in McAllen for folks who cross the country illegally, some of them hoping to gain asylum as well. They're working the system. You just mentioned you got your colleagues, air quotes, colleagues, other side, coming up here pretty soon doing their own Democrat Party senator tour of our facility in a few days. Senator, you don't have friends in national media. We're at a disadvantage in trying to get the truth out there, and they're so far away in New York and D.C. You're going to have to redouble efforts on your part, your party's part, the White House part, in order to shine a light on this issue and own the message, because I'm afraid with the revolving door of policymakers, especially on the left, coming down here, they're going to just steal this issue away from you and continue to paint the U.S. as the enemy, as the bad guy, and just continue opening up the door, prying that door open for illegal immigration.
You're exactly right, and that's one reason why I'm talking to you this morning, and why we're going to be down there in the Valley, because we can't allow the left to capture the narrative, which is in fact factually wrong, and spread this disinformation. It's a battle for the hearts and minds of the American people. But in the end, Sergio, I think what I hope that Republicans will be is the party of legal immigration, legal, orderly immigration that doesn't allow people to jump in line ahead of people who've been waiting patiently and lawfully for some time. The Democrats now clearly are the party of illegal immigration, and I think that's something that the voters are going to have to decide. Where is the American people? Do the American people come down? And I think they will come down on the side of lawful, legal, orderly immigration, and not just this humanitarian and security crisis that we're seeing as a result of the policies on the left.
And the southwest border illegal immigration numbers processed in May, record numbers. It was like 144,000 plus, and we saw a drop up to 104,000 in June. Do you think that was in part Mexico enforcing their southern border, or was that just seasonal? Have you done a deeper dive into those numbers?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. It's Mexico is deploying its National Guard along the border, and but I also believe that just the heat, it's pretty hot, and it's a tough trip from Central America up through Mexico, and unfortunately people die and are robbed and raped in the process. That's the other part of it. People claim in Washington to be sympathetic to the migrant, but they turn a blind eye to the terrible abuse and in fact loss of life that occurs as a result of this uncontrolled humanitarian influx. So,
that's
so
right.
We're going to continue to shine the light on that, too.
Yeah, and point the finger of blame correctly back to the failed societies, governments of Central America, the coyotes, the smugglers, everybody who's not being blamed. It's always the U.S. that keeps being blamed by the left. Well, Senator, I'll let you go. Thank you for your time. And I know that Mike Pence at one time was a talk radio host. We would be honored to hear from him if you can extend an invitation to him. Post-visit.
I'll encourage you.
Yeah, post-visit, what he sees, we'd like to hear from him what he thought about his visit down here if you get a chance. Thank you, Senator.